Let's move to this new exciting chapter on two evolving energy technology pathways. The way it's organized is very nice because it starts with one figure and then keeps adding all the details to it to see how the 100% renewability of energy generation and its use, as well as integrating transportation into the energy production system, can be done. So the two evolving energy technology pathways essentially refer to having central grid, distributed grid with renewable energy supplies like wind and solar and fuel cells, and then also worry about how to account for the intermittency of the solar and wind to make a reliable 24/7 load following grid by adding hydrogen itself, its renewable manufacturing and distribution with no emissions to be added to the energy system. Okay, so we'll see what we mean. It's a really nice chapter. Again, the thing to remember is that I'm not an electrical engineer, but I'm translating the chapter by doing a good amount of background research to translate it for you as podcast. So if you get to learn this course from somebody else, hopefully maybe you get somebody who's much more of an expert. Okay, let's quickly run through the nomenclature and the symbols because they're used throughout. Most of them you know: degree centigrade, alternating current, battery electric vehicles. We will learn these: combined cooling, heat and power. So this is a way of maximizing efficiency of power production and minimizing losses. Methane, combined heat and power. That's just a different version of CCHP. Direct current. I think we all know that alternating current is easy to transmit and easy to change in terms of voltage and so on, but many of the things we use on a daily time scale, like lighting, laptops, PCs, servers and so on, require direct current, so there is a conversion back and forth which can cause losses. So some renewable energies are arguing that DC is not so hard to transmit after all, using some other methods that we won't really get into the details. Distributed energy resources, distributed generation, fuel cells. FC is fuel cell, FCEV is fuel cell electric vehicle. Going through this gives you kind of a mental picture of what are the things we're going to cover, so it's interesting. Grid to vehicle, so charging up electric vehicle or a fuel cell electric vehicle of some sort, which requires a plug-in and energy from the grid. Greenhouse gases, gas turbines, independent system operator, molten carbonate fuel cells. So we'll look at different types of fuel cells that are already being manufactured and what are the differences and applications of those, ideal applications of those. Megawatts, phosphoric acid fuel cell, proton exchange membrane fuel cell, plug-in electric vehicle, plug-in fuel cell electric vehicles, particulate matter, the emissions from combustion, which is a great contributor to the emissions, but is part of pretty much everything we do right now in terms of getting energy and using energy, driving around, etc. Right? Internal combustion engines and so on. Steam methane reformation is a way of extracting hydrogen from gases like methane. Solid oxide fuel cell, another type. Vehicle to grid. So if a battery vehicle or a fuel cell vehicle has energy and is not going to be using it, it's going to lose it, discharge it over time anyway. So can they be plugged into the grid to give the energy back? It turns out that you can. And wholesaling of energy distribution, which is going to be one of the challenges, right now is done with wholesale distribution access tariff. Okay. Symbols: battery electric vehicles. So it has this plug-in here. Hydrogen batteries. So this is kind of a nomenclature where hydrogen is made immediately available to run fuel cells. So the storage can act as a renewable battery source. Central combustion plants, hydrogen dispensers, which are already in place in many places. Electric batteries, either at a utility scale or what's in these vehicles, but we'll mostly use this symbol for as a part of the energy storage at house level or office building level and so on. Industries, electrolyzers, which produce hydrogen, for example, from electrolysis. Nuclear plants, of course. Fuel cell electric vehicles, shown with an H2 in there, which is the fuel that is directly being converted to energy. So as opposed to combustion engines where you are using fuel to drive combustion to heat and produce steam, or some other ways of fuel mixture and so on to move a piston engine and so on to produce energy, fuel cells directly convert a mixture of fuel and, let's say, air to produce electricity or some form of energy. So plug-in fuel cells has this little wire in the back. Fuel cell gas turbine hybrids, which is already in place, produced by Mitsubishi, I think. Residences fuel cells. So you note this little change here. This has got electrolysis, similar looking symbol with this thing flipped here, but these are fuel cells. We'll see how they actually work. Small gas turbines, individual units, for example. The regular gas turbines, which use fossil fuels in most cases, except in these hybrid types. Solar photovoltaics, gasoline stations for regular fossil fuel. This building symbol is for universities, hospitals, offices, commercial buildings, to differentiate them from industries and residences. Hydroelectric plants and wind generators. Okay, so we know already that fossil fuels are the energy source for pretty much everything we are doing now, other than a small percentage that is now being contributed with increasing percentages every year from renewables like solar, wind, hydroelectric has already been there, but wave energy, geothermal, and so on. Okay. They cause pollution, what in this book, in this chapter, is referred to as criteria pollutants, which are basically like methane, carbon monoxide, nitrous oxide, sulfur dioxide, particulate matters, which are regulated. They are referred to as criteria pollutants, other than greenhouse gases. There are two pathways to transform electricity and transportation sectors to renewables, 100% renewable, including the grid operation itself. Okay, the pathways merge electricity and transportation, as in plug-in electric vehicles, and the deployment of energy storage technology. So the intermittency and the need for dispatchability, or increasing and reducing power supply to meet the demands require storage technologies, because wind and solar, as they begin to become a larger fraction of the total energy portfolio, one has to remember that they vary during the day and night, cloudiness, by seasons, by eclipses, and so on and so forth, and winds also change during the day and during the seasons. Okay, that's kind of the background with which we will build a longer story, as we will see. Very interesting things we will learn here, and really a good way to be optimistic about the future as to how we can get to 100% renewable energy, 24/7 load following, as well as the distribution grid technologies like microgrid, nanogrid, and so on.